All right, Modified family, we are back out here, finally getting a minute to work on our GSR project, our JDM B18C, where we have no oil pressure when we get to operating temperature. It's low at startup, but no oil when running. So I think we eliminated the top end. We took that apart. Everything looked good in there, but the bottom end is a mystery. I've gone through and I replaced the main bearings. After the first time it happened, I also replaced the oil pump with a brand new one, but it didn't seem like that had any kind of difference because the same thing happened with the original oil pump as happened with this oil pump, which was no improvement. So let's get into it today. Give me 5 on my black hand side and let's go. This is the head. It's beautiful. I love this thing. I know it's an absolute beast. I haven't got to feel it with the upgrades yet. Both the upgraded Skunk 2 cams and this intake manifold. These should both be the ticket to power. After we rep, I also have a brand new throttle body. It's actually sitting right there. That goes onto this. It's already matched for the new throttle body, but right now we got to keep it as legal as possible while it's still on the streets. And when this goes back together, all this will be cleaned off. And then I will make sure I seal these in appropriately because this one was sealed great. This one was leaking, but even after I fixed this, it did not restore my oil pressure coming across the aisle. This looks absolutely beautiful. It's still the stock bore with P73 pistons in here, going from the P72s to 73s, hoping for a little bit more compression. And this is run on 91 octane pump gas. But everything looks super clean up here. The cylinders feel immaculate, so there's no damage in there, and that shouldn't really affect the oil pressure. I did, of course, as you remember, break the NOx sensor, so I hope I can source one of those off one of these other engines sitting back here in the mix. But yeah, we gotta get the oil pan off, get this thing flipped upside down, and see what's going on with the crank. People have told me it could possibly be the bearings again, because we checked the rod bearings, they looked good. We checked the main bearings and we replaced those and they looked fine actually both times, but I was just kind of throwing stuff against the wall to see what would stick. Also want to check the rear main seal. I was looking at it and there's a little drop of oil, so I just want to make sure it's seated correctly because it should be new and it doesn't look like it's torn, but I want to make sure no oil is getting past there. I want to give this thing every opportunity for a good life and good oil pressure. All right, just a quick strip down. Crank pulley is off. Crank pulley bolt out. I gotta clean all that thread locker out of there. It just keeps it building up, but it keeps it nice and tight. But everything here looks good. Water pumps here. Everything's there that should be. And of course, brand new oil pump. Also took off the oil pickup and the windage tray and just collected all those in bags so I would not lose them. So I do have my gasket. That wasn't the problem. What else is in here? We got to get further, probably get the crank all the way out to see what's really crack-a-lacking in here, because the oil pickup was not bad whatsoever. There's a little bit of stuff up here, but my camera can definitely not zoom in, but not enough in there to keep it from working. So we'll delve deeper. We're just progressively taking things apart, making sure that we're not losing any of the pieces and seeing if there's any obvious problem. We want to get down to the crank to see if any of the journals are full of gunk, whether it's RTV or metal or anything. The oil drained out, had very little in there, mostly just little specks of RTV, probably for me cleaning off the top end when I put that back together. But it didn't seem like anything was damaged, like none of the bearings were like disintegrating. So the hunt continues. All right, so oil pump is off, came off no problem. I did a really good job sealing it. There's only a minimal layer of RTV all through here, which means that I didn't overdo it. So I got all the hardware tucked away in the bag. I replaced the bottom part of these main bearings and they're butted up perfectly. They're not overlapping. I think it was this side where the bearing spun onto the other side before, like the reason I took this whole motor apart. So, I mean, at least that's in place. There's no play side to side because that's what would happen if we didn't put the thrust washer bearings in, or if there's only one in there, there would be too much movement here, especially when you press on the clutch. And then, but there's no like extra play here, so that's hopefully a good sign. And everything looked good in the oil pump, but coming down here, this little spring piece inside this filter, oh, it just came right off. So this is important on top of this seal. This is very important. So I will replace this with a new one because it wasn't a problem now, I don't think, because this is the new pump, but it could be a problem in the future. So I gotta put that on my list of things to order. And we're also gonna take this seal out right here, which I think is a coolant passage.
Well,
this is an oil passage? Oh, so that's why we're checking that, to make sure there's no blockages in there. Well, this is what the crank looks like. I wiped each one of these. It looks pretty smooth. This journal seems clear, but we'll only know till we get it all the way out and can really get a look for it. But all the hardware holding this is off. Next, we're gonna get off these rod caps so we can get the crank completely out. And if you look through the top here, let's see if I can focus on that. See right behind, right there, there it is, that baby. That one. And one more. That one. Those are all oil squirters, and they're all there. So, people, I did not forget to install those. So, those are all in place, because if those aren't in place, it leaves like a 1/4-inch size hole that should step down to a little like 1/8-inch squirter. And so, it does not allow it to build oil pressure. Looking at the girdle, these bearings look like probably like they're more worn than they should be, right? Like, see? Yeah, this is maybe has an hour of runtime, and these are brand new, because after I had this problem in the first place, I swapped out the other bearings and put these in place. So I'm gonna get another set of bearings, and I think these are just ACL standard bearings, I think. I gotta figure out what the difference between the race ones and the standard ones are. But I would this is just a regular build, normal operating conditions, so that's why I wasn't putting anything, I wasn't trying to overbuild this. I just wanted it to work. So we're still tearing this apart. We'll come back when this crank is out. Rod caps are off. They're all sitting right here. We're gonna wipe them and label them. They all look good though. I mean, there's a little bit of wear in there, but they have been used. Not a whole ton, but they've been there longer than they've been there longer than the main bearings. But yeah, they basically all look okay. So we just gotta clean them, mark them. We're gonna check the journals on the crank still there, once we can get some light through there. All right, so a couple things. I don't think the bearings are supposed to be black, so that might mean they got a little heat because not enough oil was getting where it needed to get. Here on these little end caps of the main caps, they're pretty black in there. The middle ones and the girdle weren't like that, but I replaced all this side. No, I replaced all of them. I replaced both because I slid out the other ones and slid in the new ones. The first time we measured, the second time we did not measure because we got the same size, so I just slipped them in there. So we got to check all that stuff again and probably order a new set of bearings. Yay. Exciting. So we're going to look over the crank, see if there's anything. Zero's putting the eagle eye to it. We're grabbing the flashlight, but there doesn't seem to be anything in the passages. This is a conundrum, and here is where we leave you. We checked all of the passageways that run through the engine to the side. They're over here. One is where the actual oil pump connects to it, and one is this plug right here. We took it out, shined light through it to see if there's anything impeding it. Those come out into from here, like those go into that passage here, and then this passage here goes back to the oil cooler. So we also took off the oil cooler. These lines are new. These hold coolant. So we took this middle piece off. Luckily it's a 32mm socket, just like the axle, so this came off no problem. So we checked inside of this and everything seemed to be functioning as it should be. Nothing looked out of place. So we ended up, after we took the crank out, we made sure, of course, the thrust washer bearings are there. This is a special place in my heart because of an accident that happened with one of my GSRs, so I always make sure that is in there. So yes, we took out the oil squirters and we checked each of those, and then I had to take one for the team and put my mouth onto this actual oil squirter, so like one of these pieces, and I blew into it just to make sure there was nothing blocking it, and it had no obstruction, and a little bit of oil in there came out. These are the bolts that hold it, and they're not hollow. There's actually a spring in there, and you can see it in the little side hole piece. There's a spring in there that goes to the bottom, and some of them were much more movable, I guess is the word. So when you press on them, they would compress. Some of them like barely move, like they were kind of gunked up. So this is just gonna soak in degreaser. This is not caustic, so it's not gonna have any effect on the actual metal itself, but hopefully it'll clean out any gunk. So is this enough to stop the oil pressure? Because it has pressure at startup, It probably has the pressure at startup that it should have when it's at idle, about 25, 30 PSI. And then as it gets closer to being operating temperature, the pressure drops until the oil light comes on, and on a tester gauge hooked up to the back of the head, it also reads close to zero or almost non-existent on the oil pressure. But everything in here looks absolutely gorgeous. The bearings will come out and be replaced. We'll deep clean everything and then put it all back together. The oil pump will get a new O-ring, like not the inside one, that looks good, but the outside one, because the little spring that keeps that tight was coming out. So before that becomes a problem, that'll go back on there. Is that going to be enough to fix it? Do not know. These are all the bearings out. So yeah, that doesn't look good, I don't think. That looks like how they look for being in there for a couple years, not for like less than an hour of runtime. What else? Yeah, and the head looks good. Everything's kind of precariously put here. Everything else is put into bags for safety, so I know everything is grouped together and can be put back together, because the worst thing would be finding the problem, putting it back together, and then missing parts, because that would delay this thing going back together. But everything's sitting safe in the garage, everything's numbered and sat in a place where it'll go exactly back in its place. All right, thanks, Modified family. Everyone's been asking me for updates. They've been messaging me like, hey, what's new? It's like, well, if I had time to fix this, I would. So this is making the time, going through here. Got to order a couple parts, just the bearings and that oil pump seal. I think that's the word I've been looking for. And then we'll see from there. All right, Modified family, any suggestions, just put them. Be like, it doesn't even matter what it is. Just say like, hey, it could be this. I've had this happen before. Just put it in the comments. Thanks, family. I'll see you next time.